Hi there, Lara here. So I've got a little bit of footwork for you today. So we'll start with the legs extended in front of us, palms beside us, fingers can face forward if that's comfortable for the wrist. Too much, point them out. Too much, point them back. Too much, make fists. Still too much, hands on blocks. Hands on blocks. Really nice options, right? Whatever suits you. If you're wanting more, you can slide your hands back a bit and bend your elbows. Okay, pointing, flexing. And pointing for circles. Going the other way. And flexing, curling, pointing, flipping. Flexing, curling, pointing, flipping. One more. Good. And then try to keep the flip of the toes, flex the feet. If you brought your hands back, bring them forward. Separate your legs, bend right knee, bend left knee. You can scoot yourself a little more forward as needed. And you can always sit up on a block or on a foamy or a rolled up towel, something of that nature would work great. Now you can do this next part with one foot at a time or both feet at the same time, depending on mobility and what feels good. So if you're doing one leg at a time, it can be nice to either let this leg straighten, let the leg go to the side, keep the knee bent. These are all good options. You could even support the leg with a block. Those are all nice ways to do it. And then we're trying to wrap the palm around the toes and then the fingers around the toe mound. And then push those toes away from us, trying to bring them toward the ground. So this is what it would look like with one hand. And you can have the hand on the inside of the knee or the arm on the outside, right? Both are okay. And if it was hard to reach, you could always have your foot on a block, make it a little easier to grab. Still is tricky, you could loop a strap over the sole of the foot or over the toes to pull them closer. These are all good ways to do the same thing. And if you were doing it with both legs together, again, you could wrap around from the outside, like so, and then push the toes into your fingers, your palms, or you can go on the inside. And if you go for the inside, I like the legs a little bit wider. Try not to let your knees move out, but pull them in. And you can work them towards the floor. Good. And if you're doing one leg or one foot at a time, just holding there, we're going to do 2 rounds. Good. And then releasing, letting the legs relax. So say you were to have done one leg at a time on the other side, you do one leg at a time on this side too. And again, we're going to keep going with the right foot both times, and then we'll switch to the left side if you're doing one. So in this case, base of the hand wraps around the toes, you're curling the toes here, so the toes are curling toward the sole of the foot, and then you're wrapping the fingers around to push the toe mound towards you as you encourage the curling of the toes. And you can wrap the fingers around the toes a little bit here. I like my thumb and my pinky wide so that I can get more grip. And again, you have options. You can bring your foot a bit higher if it's hard to reach. And again, you could wrap a strap over there and pull as well. That would be another way to get a similar stretch. Or if you had one of those resistance bands, that would be a really good way to get it too. And if you wanted more, you'd simply start to point your foot more. It's a little bit awkward with the block though. It's probably more accessible if the foot's already on the ground. Good. And again, if you were doing both legs, it would look a little bit more like this. Either arms on the outside to wrap, or maybe arms on the inside. The feet would need to be a bit wider in that case. Good. Just a few more deep breaths. Good, and then releasing. Extend the legs, relax. Now from here, we'll do the opposite side, or repeat either way, bending the knees. If you were doing one side and then the other, This time you'll do the left leg. So you'll support with the block. I like to tilt my block a little bit towards me. You can have it flat if you like though, but if you are tilted a little bit, it's more comfortable, I find. And then in this case, you'll work with just the left foot, either foot on the floor or foot elevated, depending on what works for you. And then we'll start by pushing the toes away from us, either arm on the inside or the outside, whatever feels more comfortable for you, but not letting the knee wander if you go on the inside. If you're doing both legs, it will be more like this. And if you wanted it to be harder this time, you could go legs together if you wanted to. And then push the soles of the feet toward the floor as you wrap it on the toes, around the toes, and pull them toward you. And it's all space allowing, right? It doesn't matter if the legs are together or apart, doesn't matter if you do one leg at a time or both. And then when you're ready to, you'll release, let the toes relax for a moment, and then if you're doing both sets of feet at the same time, both sets of toes, you'll wrap the toes, you'll squeeze them, curl them, base of the palm on top of the foot, fingers wrap around the sole of the foot or toward the toe mound or the bottom of the toe mound, and then you squeeze and wrap. And again, your legs can be further apart, your arms can be on the inside if needed. And if you're doing one leg at a time, then you're letting this leg be resting as you work on this foot. Maybe you're elevating the foot, maybe you're not. And again, you have options. You can have your legs straight, you can have your knee bent as well if you're doing one leg at a time. These are all good ways to do the same thing. Just a couple more breaths. And then release completely. Extend the legs, squeeze and relax the toes a few times. And then relax everything. Good. Now from here, we're going to stretch our toes in a slightly different way. So bending the knees, bringing the feet to you. Soles of the feet are clapping, knees are wide. If you get too much hip stretch, you've got the option of support. And if your knees are super high, I suggest sitting on a bit of height. This will allow your hip flexors to relax and sink a bit. Who knows how much? Doesn't matter how much, as long as there's no pulling, tugging, no pain. If there is, a little more height, a little support under those hips can go a long way. Heels are as close to you as feels good. And this is another place where you can do one leg at a time or both, or one foot at a time or both together. So if you're doing one at a time, you'll have one leg out, extend the leg, whatever suits you. Again, you have the option of block support under the knee as well. Right? All of these are good ways to do the same thing. But I'll demonstrate both legs together. So fingers go in between the toes here. And you might find it really difficult to place the fingers between the toes. If that's the case, start with the first two toes. Try to get fingers, maybe the pointer and the thumb, or the middle finger and the pointer between those first two sets of toes. Or maybe just grab the big toes, right? All of these are good options. If you can get your big toes, you are going far. You just have to be persistent, right? If you keep doing it, you'll be able to get between all the toes eventually. Anywho, if you're getting between all the toes and you want more, you can actually use one set of fingers to pull the other closer and then do the opposite. It's a little more awkward, but it's possible. And the closer you get webbing of fingers to webbing of toes, the deeper the sensation will be. Imagine you're crushing something underneath each knee, you're lengthening the spine here, you're trying not to round the back too much if you can avoid it. It's okay if it happens a bit though. Try to press the soles of the feet together, you're squeezing with the fingers. Try to relax your jaw. And then squeeze with your toes. Face as relaxed as possible here, it makes a difference. And then fingers squeezing toes again. Just alternating with as long a hold as you can manage without pain. You can push your baby toes into the floor a bit more, and when you're using the fingers, wrap the thumbs around those big toes and squeeze them. The more pressure you create, the more flexibility and strength you'll gain in the joints. However, you don't want to be going into sharp territory. If you are, less is more. Take a rest, come back into it. If you get a cramp, take a rest. And then toes squeezing fingers. We'll do 3 rounds. Good. Fingers squeezing toes, last round. Try to keep those toe mounds touching if you can. Even pressure maybe, heels squeezing. The more you squeeze your heels, the more you get. And then last time, toes squeeze fingers. Now slowly release, and I would not rush when you come out. Sometimes you'll get quite a bit of sensation, and you don't want to overdo the transition. The transitions are really crucial in yoga. The slower you go, the more benefit. And the less likely you will create any injury of any sort. Good. And resting the hands. If it's not restful to sit in this position, knees come together, extend the legs, separate them perhaps, and then relax. Good. Now from there, we're going to do one more toe stretch. I'm going to try to do it against the wall here so you can see, but I'll do a couple of angles. So let's see how that'll work. I think that'll work. Okay, so for this one, you can take your toes to the blocks, and if you have, I would say 2 blocks is easier. 1 foot on each block. Toe mounds at the block, heels away from the block, and then pushing the toe mounds into that block. And you can have your hands behind you for support, lift the chest, lift the abdomen, and so on. So this is a really nice connection, pushing into the baby toes and the big toes the same amount. And then the same thing can be done the other way, pointing the toes, pushing the tops of the toes into your blocks like so. And I'll show you in a different position as well. So against the wall is ideal, but if you did not have the wall, it would look more like this. So you'd have the toes at the blocks, heels not at the blocks, and then slowly straightening, being as far away as you want to be. So if the legs are straight, it'll be more intense on the hamstrings and so on as well. It's very much up to you what feels good. Do not force your body. Hamstrings are tighter, you could do it with a more bent knee. Back of that block is against the wall. You could even put your feet directly against a wall. No problem, right? Both would work. And then the same thing, curl the toes, bring the tips of the big toes closer to that block. Bent knees is easier. And then push the tops of the toes into the block, like so. So you're pushing, pushing, pushing. But if you're against that wall, it'll make all the difference. Good. And then relax. Now if you wanted more still, one last option is soles of the feet together and then toes stretching at an imaginary wall. So imagine this is a wall, you're pushing your toes into that wall, the toes are spread, and you're getting more sensation of stretch. And another way to do that same position is with your hands. Spreading the toes, taking the fingers to the toes, and pulling them apart like this. And then if you want more, you can bring just your big toes to touch, just your baby toes to touch. These are really nice options too. All right. Anywho, enjoy. And if you have any questions at all, leave me a comment or send me an email and I'm happy to accommodate them. Make sure you do Shavasana. Take care.